This is Love Notes, daily devotions from Holy Trinity Lutheran Church. Grace and peace to you. Our text today is John, the 8th chapter, verse 12, and the 9th chapter, verses 3 through 5. These are two small segments of a long and wonderful story about how Jesus gives sight to a man who was born blind, and in the process reveals the blindness of humanity. We begin with Jesus declaring one of the I am statements. I am is the name for God. And Jesus says, I am, God is the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have light and life. That's what Jesus brings into the world. And what follows then is the story of a man who was born blind. When the disciples see the man born blind begging along the road, they say, who was responsible for this blindness? Did the man sin or did his parents sin and then God punished him? Isn't that how we think all the time? The disciples are just like us. What was the cause of this blindness? And Jesus' response is, neither of those things happened. He didn't sin. His parents didn't sin. He was born blind so that today his blindness can be a way that God shows how light overcomes darkness. Not that God caused the blindness and said, oh, I'm going to use this guy at some later date. That's fatalism. That's not faith. It's that when suffering is encountered in any of its shapes or forms, it becomes an opportunity for God to do resurrection. The story of the man born blind is a fascinating one in which a man is given his sight. You'd think everybody in town would rejoice and we'd all be following Jesus, but that's not what happens. They have questions for this man. They have questions for his parents. They want to discredit Jesus at every turn. All through the story, the man gets more bold about declaring who Jesus is. And finally, he annoys the Pharisees and the leaders of the community enough that they throw him out of the synagogue. They reject him, just as they will reject Jesus later. They reject the one who's healed by Jesus as a precursor, you might say, to rejecting the one who gave him the light in the first place. The man is given his sight, and so now he can see trees, and he can see people, and he can see colors. But as the story unfolds and he comes to declare more and more boldly who Jesus is, we also come to understand that he's seeing with his heart, seeing with the Spirit's help, and he's seeing who Jesus really is. In the end, worshiping him. That reveals that the people who've shoved him out of the synagogue are really the ones who all along have been born blind. They can't see God when God is right in front of them. I am shows up and they can't see. That is the story of our lives as well. We choose darkness over light. We choose death over life. We choose blindness over sight. And when God enters in and offers all of those other things to set us free, we resist. Because we'd rather be in control and be blind than to be sighted and follow Jesus. It's a curious thing. This declaration that Jesus is the light of the world tells us that the other things in this world that we think are light are not. It calls us to follow him and to follow him alone because only he, the Word made flesh dwelling among us, can give us light in the midst of our darkness. That's why this is an essential text. Amen.